Hi, so I'm Ruth Mills and I work in Birmingham for a company called Connect Group, and Connect is an advertising and marketing agency. So you might be thinking, why am I here if I'm doing advertising and marketing? But I work as a software developer, and back in the 90s I was at St John's College at Oxford studying chemistry, and my research project was computer simulations of surfactant adsorption. So when I graduated, I was looking for work in Wiltshire, and the only chemistry job that I could find in Trowbridge where I lived was as a lab technician at a factory that made shampoo, and they didn't even offer me the job. So then a week or two later, I interviewed for a job at a software house that did software for things like ticket machines and signals and brakes on railways. Got that job, they loved me, and I was there for about 3.5, 4 years, and then went down to London, well, Surrey, for a year or two, and that was when I got into website development and Java. And that's sort of like the area of work I've been in since then, since 2000. And I started working for Connect back in 2013. And the sort of company we are, it's like a really diverse mix of people, some very creative people that come up with all the advertising ideas, photography, video production, graphics, and then lots of technical people like myself, because I do back-end Java development. And it's like the vision statement for Connect is to be famous for combining creativity and technology to produce outrageously good results. So that's like the sort of company that I'm working for, a very diverse mix of people. So my talk is about agile development, both as applied to software and also where you can take it outside of software as well. So to start off with, the old way of doing things, I mean, this was, I've worked on projects like this, so I know exactly what it was like. You spend, you have to wait for the analysis before you can start on design, and then you've got to wait for the design to be done before you can start on the coding, and then, you wait right until the end to do your testing. And then what happens with that sort of project is that you end up with a mad panic right at the end of the project. Late nights, everybody gets stressed out like headless chickens. It's not a nice way of working at all. And also, on the downside of that, it's like there's often lulls where you're waiting for all this analysis and design to be done before you can start work. So either you're like bored out of your head, or you're totally maxed out, and it's just not a healthy way to work at all. So the way forward from there, I mean, this was actually back in February 2001 that this was thought of. I think it was like in Salt Lake City or somewhere else like that in Utah. A load of software geeks got together and they thought, how can we actually improve the way of working? And so they came up with what later became Agile, and like the cornerstones of that, for starters, individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools. So that means your people are your most important asset, rather than having like a strict procedure to follow. Likewise, working software is a far better bet than too much documentation. So actually having something that works that you can show the client is a lot better than like reams of paperwork and no software that does anything. Likewise, customer collaboration is better than contract negotiation. You don't want to set everything in stone before you even started work, because the business requirements of your client, they're going to change over time. The best thing to do is to respond as quickly as possible to the changing needs of your client. And likewise, responding to change is a far better bet than following a very rigid plan and not being able to act when the customer's needs change. So, what came out of that was there's a way of working that we do called Scrum, and that's nothing to do with rugby, actually, as you might think. I think the actual name of Scrum comes from like the daily stand-up meeting we have, where everybody huddles around in a circle, so it kind of like looks like a rugby scrum to the outside world, even though it's just a load of geeks talking tech. And the way we do that is we work on what's called a sprint, and that at Connect is 2 weeks long, and we start the sprint by having the analysis and the design done up front, just in time. So what normally happens is the business analysts and the designers, they're doing their work towards the end of the previous sprint in what we call sprint zero work. And then during the sprint, it's always about focusing on the highest priorities first. What is the most important thing that the customer needs? So it's like, must have, should have, could have, and won't have. You start with the must haves, and you don't even bother looking at the won't haves. So by the end of your sprint, what you aim to have is a fully working and tested bit of software that's good enough to go out the door. And the good thing about Agile and Scrum is that because everything's done every 2 weeks, you're working at a sustainable pace, you're getting rid of the mad panics, so nobody has to work ludicrous hours most of the time or anything like that. And you're also keeping the team working all the time. There's no lulls where people are just sitting around doing nothing. And the good thing as well is that it's easy to respond to change, so you can change the order of work that you tackle in sprints, and you can add new sprints if something important happens that the customer wants, like ASAP, and you can juggle the order around as well. And so, what sort of people do we have on a Scrum team? So, one of the most important people is the product owner, and that represents the client. And so the product owner will be making sure that what the team delivers meets the needs and requirements of the client. As well as that, there's the Scrum Master, who's not like your traditional project manager. So what the Scrum Master does is make sure that that the team is working well together. They shield the team from all the outside distractions and politics. If something's blocking the team from being able to carry on, the Scrum Master will look into it and try and find a solution to it ASAP. And the Scrum Master will also make sure that people are following the process, making sure they update their time that they've spent on the work, so that everything's following as it should be. And then there's the development team themselves. So in Connect, it's typically business analysts, designers, people dealing with user experience, and then developers. I'm a back-end developer. We've also got front-end developers that do the HTML and all the look and feel and stuff. And then people doing quality assurance and testing. And on the case of the websites we do for Jaguar and Land Rover, there's a dedicated authoring team that are authoring all the content, all the pictures of the cars, all the text about the cars. And then experts in the content management system that stores all the content that then gets shown on the website. And so why I think that Agile and Scrum make for better teamwork as a whole, the most important thing is that Agile teams are self-managing, so people are free to organise themselves as best they can to meet the goals of that sprint. Everybody's treated as equal, and we're absolutely, communication and collaboration are absolutely key to this process. You've got to talk to each other. If you don't talk to each other, it's not going to work properly. And you're also encouraged to be flexible. So it's for example, I am primarily a back-end developer, but what I've started doing recently is also doing some of the automated testing, which is something we do to make, so we can make sure the web pages are working as they should be, but automate it, so when we've made some changes, we can rerun all these tests and make sure that things are still working as they should be. And then everybody on the team is encouraged to suggest improvements to the way that we work. So, we as a team get better over time. So overall, we're then more in control, happier, more empowered, and more motivated to do our work. And it does work really well. And so, the way that we actually specify requirements in Agile and Scrum, very high-level requirements, like the end goal of what you're working towards, that's known as an epic. So that's, thinking about that's just way too big to try and estimate on its own. So what the business analysts do then is they split it down into what are called user stories, and the typical format of those is, as a so-and-so, I want to do something so that I get this benefit. So it could be, I'm visiting the Jaguar website, I want to see what cars are on offer, so I can find out what the best car for my needs is. Or for myself, it could be, as a trans woman, I want to get my GRS done so that I can get my body as I feel that I am inside and complete the biggest part of my transition. For example, So it can be just as easily applied to that as well. And so what normally happens is that we add the user stories to the sprint, and then we estimate how long each of those is going to take. And the way we do that is that we start the sprint with a planning meeting where we look at all the user stories, but rather than at this point estimating in like how many days it's going to take to do each bit of work, we do a very high level estimation called planning poker, where people have got a phone app and that's got Fibonacci numbers on, so for example 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and people are given each user story and everybody holds their phones up with a number which kind of like is their rough estimate of how complicated they think that story is going to be, just so the team can work out what are going to be the most challenging things to tackle on that sprint and whether they've got the capacity overall to do it. Because if it turns out that there's too much work that the team could possibly do, then the team will just say, no, we can't do all this, let's just look at the most important stuff. And then what happens then is that every team, each member of the team works out what tasks they need to do. So for me, it's like, you know, which back-end tasks I need, what software I need to develop, how long is each of those tasks going to take me? And so that works out, you know, how many hours the team are going to take to complete all this work. And then every morning, when people come in, there's the daily stand-up. And that's where people stand around in the huddle, and people would say, for example, well, I worked on this yesterday, I'm going to be looking at this today, I finished this bit of work, and this problem is going to stop me from carrying on, so we need to get this sorted pronto. And that just like helps people check in with the rest of the team. So if I say I finished this bit of work, that might mean that the QA person can then start testing it, for example. And then at the end of the sprint, there's the sprint review and the demo, and that's where we demonstrate like the web page we've just created to the client, and the client will say, yeah, that's brilliant, hopefully most of the time. And then after that, there's the retrospective where the team basically say, okay, we've done this great, let's continue doing that. We've not done this, let's start doing that. And we've done this badly, let's stop doing that. And that's just like an overview of the process. I'm going to skip past that because I'm running out of time. This is the Scrum board, and that's where we've got the tasks that are waiting to be done, in progress, in test, and things that are finished, just so we can keep track of what tasks we're working at a given time. And this is what's called the burn down chart, and that just shows you, okay, this many hours at the start. If that doesn't go down, if it stays high, you know you're in trouble. And then the Scrum Master will start getting mardy with you and saying, you know, come on, why isn't this done? Have you not updated your time? And finally, we've got acceptance criteria and definition of done. So acceptance criteria, that's basically what the product owner dictates must be done for that to pass the sprint. So it's like, you know, given that I'm on the home page of Jaguar, when I click on the picture of the car, I want to be taken to the page.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
And then there's a definition of done, and that's basically what the team decide, okay, when we've done all this, we're finished, so that's good. So things like making sure we've completed all the testing, and if there's any bugs, they're put in the backlog to be dealt with later on. And then some best practices we use behaviour-driven development, that's like what I said, like the given, when and then. Clean code, so making sure the code is readable and easy to maintain. Test-driven development, that's where you test everything. So you start with a test, you watch it fail because you're not written the code. You write the code, run the test, it should pass, and basically repeat that process, making sure that none of the old tests fail. And then we do automated testing, we keep everything in source control, we do continuous integration, and we have a scrum of scrums a couple of times a week where people from across the teams talk to each other, and if there's any issues affecting one team, somebody else in another team might have a solution for it. They've actually applied this to education over in the Netherlands too. There's something called eduScrum, which is, I think it's used for like teaching science, and that's where like groups of young people, about 4 people at a time, will follow this sort of Scrum process, but it might be that they're planning out how to do a science experiment. And so again, they sort of like plan everything out before they do it, they stand up every morning. And what they found is that the level of motivation is so much higher with this process, and also that the actual results they're getting, the grades are getting that much higher than before they implemented it. So it's something that will work equally well in education as well as in software. And that's just a picture of people doing eduScrum in Holland. And then finally, this is my big sprint epic, and that's preparing for my Gender Reassignment Surgery in Brighton. And so I've come up with the Sprint Zero tasks, which I need to do before I can get my GRS. So weight loss, I needed to be 81 kilograms and down to 73 this morning. Then hair removal, and just like things like that I need to get done before I can get my surgery. And that is my burn down chart of weight since the end of October. So, you know, it can equally be applied to losing weight. So my plan is to lose 2 kilograms every 2 weeks. And finally, that's just, you know, acknowledgements and links. I've borrowed a few pictures from Wikipedia, and there's the link to eduScrum in the Netherlands.